In this watercolor tutorial of a duck, I'm going to be concentrating on the head in a more representational style and loosening up as I work my way down the body. This is a study for a larger painting that I'm going to be working on soon, and these are some of the pencil drawings that I worked on this past week. Along with all these drawings, I also have some supplies. I have an assortment of round brushes. I'm going to be painting on cold pressed watercolor paper, and then I made charts for all the different colors that I'm using, and what I'll do is I'll put the colors in the description below. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a kneaded eraser, and I'm going to be removing as much of the graphite as I can so I have a lighter drawing, and then we're going to start wet on wet. The first color I'm going to be using is Hansa Yellow Deep, and this is going to be my base layer on the bill. I'm going to drop it into very wet paper, and my brush is very wet also. I have lots of water on it. And I'm just going to make one solid color by moving the paint around using my brush. Once you have the paint applied to that section of the bill, you're going to go back in with a damp brush, remove as much water as you can from the brush, and you're going to even out the color. So now you've got a very flat wash of yellow. This gives you your base layer. Now for the second layer, you're going to go in with yellow ochre, and it's going to be a little thicker than the first layer, maybe a milk consistency, because you're starting very roughly to put in some details. You're just going to lay the paint in. Using the brush very gently, I'm going to smooth out the edges as I work my way around the bill. Now what I'm looking for is the bill is slightly rounded, so the sides are going to be darker than the middle, which is where the highlights are going to be. So I'm very gently just trying to sculpt it using the brush. Going in with a damp brush, now I'm going to use a circular motion and I'm going to blend as best I can, keeping it as soft as possible. What I'm trying to avoid are any sharp or defined edges. The next step that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be adding some contrast, and I'm doing that by adding some burnt sienna at the edge of the bill. Just these little pops of color here and there, just enough to provide some definition to the shape of the bill itself. The brush I'm using is my number 8 Silver Black Velvet, and I think this is my favorite brush. I use this the most. It holds a lot of water, so it's great for washes, but it also holds a point when I need it, and since I love to do detail, this is just about my favorite brush. The size is perfect for everything else that I do. The yellow ochre paint is dry, and that burnt sienna that I'm putting on now, it's a little thicker, so maybe a milk consistency. The brush is damp. This way, I'm not lifting the paint underneath. I'm able to just very gently blend it in. Next, I'm going to be adding the highlight. And what I've got Cerulean Blue. First, I added a little touch of water right down the center of the bill, and now I'm dropping in the cerulean. I'm going to just very gently, I'm just going to move the paint around and blend it in. It's going to stay very light for the first pass. At the tip of the beak, there's a touch of black. So what I'm doing is put a little bit of water, then I'm going to drop in some highlights. So I'm going to use the Cerulean Blue, and then I'm going to use Ivory Black, and I'm just going to lay in a little bit of black color at the very tip of the beak. Now, this is kind of the ugly phase where the beak looks a little disjointed right now, but I'm going to keep redefining as I go. On the right side, you're going to notice that I've darkened the shadow, and I did that by using a little bit of Sap Green. I've used Dyke Brown to strengthen some of the brown along the edges of the beak. So things look a little disjointed right now, but as I go, I will figure it out. Now I'm going to start painting the main body of the duck. So what I'm going to do is it's going to be wet on wet again, just to get the first layer down. And I'm using Ivory Black. We're just going to touch it in and move it about until I get one flat color. The next color I'm going to be dropping in is Winsor Green, and this one is made by Winsor and Newton. It's a strong color, it's a staining color, so once it hits the paper, you can lift a little bit, but there's always going to be a little bit of this color left. So I'm adding this color as a highlight, and I'm going to work it all the way up the top of the head and around and down the neck. It's wherever there was a highlight, this color just seems to glint through on the black feathers. I don't know a lot about ducks. This duck actually belongs to my niece. She has quite a few of them, and I actually find ducks quite amusing. I've had cats and dogs and a horse at one time, but never had ducks. And they have a lot to say a lot of the time, but I really am kidding, so I appreciate them. At this point now, I'm going to accentuate the blue. So I'm going to take a little bit of cerulean blue and put it underneath the eye. I really want to bring out that color. Then I'm also going to put it on top of the eye, and I'm going to add a little bit of pressure blue also to just bring out that blue color. At the very top of the head, I'm just going to add a little bit of Dioxazine Purple. When you look at the feathers, sometimes in between the blue, there is a little glint of purple also. I put it on, then I thought it was a little too dark, so I went back in with a damp brush and I removed a little bit of the purple so that I would just have a hint at the very top. You can see when everything dries how it shifts and it becomes much lighter. It always surprises me. Now I'm going to be adding a layer of black paint. So I'm putting a little bit of water on there and we're going to start dropping in the ivory black. The darkest black is going to be down by the beak. And then as it moves up the head where the light highlights are, I'm going to lighten it. And I'll do that by using a damp brush. And then I'll gently remove some of the black paint. Where the turn of the head is, just as it goes behind the eye and then down, starting down the neck, I'm going to be putting a little bit of black there. There's really not any highlight at that point, and it's going to be, I'm going to use a thicker black paint, so there won't be as much shading there. And basically what I'm doing is I'm emphasizing the turn of the head as the head meets the neck. Because watercolor is a transparent medium, it's just a matter of layering one layer of paint on top of the other. You work from light up to dark. Very careful. I'm very careful. I'm very slow, unfortunately. So this is actually what they call glazing, where you layer one color on top of another. I'm just going to dab in some of that beautiful Winsor Green here. I really want that color to shine through. And after I get that all blended in, I'm going to add some Prussian Blue off to the right-hand side to get that color to pop out also. Working my way down the neck, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start wet on wet. So I've got a layer of water down. Now I'm going to put a very light layer of black on there. Let that dry a little bit, and I'm going to add in the Winsor Green. Once that is pretty much dry, I'm going to go back in and I'll add a couple layers of the black, building it up as I go. Now I'm going to add in the eye, and I'm going to have that little glint of highlight at the top, give him some personality here. Now we're going to start adding a little burnt sienna. This is the second part of the neck, and it's wet on wet. We're going to keep it really loose from here on out. So I'm just getting that basically laid in, and I'm just going to move my brush up and down in a very light manner. If you're enjoying this tutorial, please consider subscribing to the channel. I'm enjoying putting them together, and it's nice to share with other people. While I'm keeping this wet, I'm also going to be adding some Dyke Brown, and then also I'm going to be touching it a little bit with Dioxazine Purple, and there's a little bit of red mixed in there also. Thanks for watching. If you're interested in any other watercolor tutorials, I'll link them above. And if you're interested in any pencil drawing tutorials, please leave a comment below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Thank you.